Be still now. I am with you. I am deep within you. You are at peace. You cannot be harmed. You will not suffer. Breathe deeply. Breathe in the healing love of the universe, and breathe out the sickness which has taken you. I am with you.
Santa Monica High School's strengths are that it's a very diverse school.
One of its greatest strengths is its diversity.
I think diversity is both the strength and the weakness.
I would say that its greatest weakness is it's also its greatest strength. The diversity here is a fantastic thing.
It's a very diverse school.
The diversity, and there's something I think you guys as students get to experience that doesn't happen in a lot of places in the country. Are there problems with it? You know, are there other challenges? Absolutely.
Greatest weaknesses and problems include a lack of unity.
The greatest problem and greatest weakness that jumps to my mind has already been removed, and that's the principal from last year.
It's easy. It's like breathing. It's like a heartbeat. It's easy.
I think there's a lot of factors involved or reasons behind why there's not as many minorities as white students in AP classes.
I think because historically people of color, students of color, are not tracked, historically speaking, toward AP classes. And so they don't come prepared with the skills necessary for an AP class. I think that's nationwide.
I think there's a culture of minorities that don't want to be in the AP classes. And I think that culture starts in elementary school, and by the time they get to high school, they feel so far behind, like there's nothing to help them catch up, that they just don't enroll.
I think the reason why the AP classes have so few minorities in it, in part, is due to the fact that students walk into a classroom where they're the only minority in there. That becomes very difficult. Really what I think needs to happen is that we have to encourage more to go in and to try to have more together.
A lot of times they don't feel like they're prepared for those classes, and they don't want to jeopardize their grades. Also, I think that sometimes they just don't know that those opportunities exist, or that it could be a benefit to them to be in those types of classes.
It's not very diverse, and I would like to see it more diverse because I know a lot of people that could be in AP that just do not choose to be in AP, or they was never taught properly to try to take an AP class.
They just don't really strive to get the grades to be in those classes.
I think it depends on their background and if their family motivates them, and maybe peer pressure from friends if it's not cool to do.
I just don't think there's enough parents of minority families who really know about what AP is and what actually it means and what it means for the future and what it means for college, just for lack of experience in life and lack of experience with education.
And it's so awkward. Like, even the first day of school, I'm like, I know I'm not the only black person in this whole class. But, you know, I learned to get over it because I've been taking honors, like, ever since the first year. And I've been the only black person in a lot of the honors class, too, so.
I think that Santa Monica for a long time has struggled with this idea of being two schools within a school, right? That they have the north side of Montana families, right? Or the kind of wealthy white families, and then they have the south of Pico families, right? Where it tend to be the low-income kids of color, right? So it's kind of the Lincoln feeding families versus the John Adams middle school kids. And so there's this tension, right, that's existed at the school for a long time in terms of whose needs get met and how those needs get met and how those groups of students come together to make Samohi kind of a productive place for everybody.
I don't know if there's anybody to fault or anybody to blame. I think a lot of kids, you know, they don't believe that they can do it. I think a lot of people have preconceived ideas of what students are capable of.
I don't think it's the administration's fault because I feel that me being here, I have had a lot of opportunities, and a lot of teachers have helped me to be here, and a lot of teachers have recommended me to be in AP classes. I feel that it's not their fault because they try. It's not like they discriminate.
I think there's a lot of people to blame. I think we all have our hand in it, from administration to parents to the district to the students themselves.
And research would say that the biggest challenges of guidance counselors is that they tend to, without meaning to, make assumptions about students and what they can be successful at, right? So there's story after story of the guidance counselor telling a student, oh, you'll never get to college, so you might as well go do this, right? And I think that what the research shows is that that really has an impact on who succeeds and navigates the system. And I think we need to help guidance counselors challenge their assumptions about students and which students can be successful.
Well, it's kind of a systemic problem within our society as well as at this school. I mean, if it were just existing at this school, then yeah, I think we would be able to hold our administration responsible. But we're really dealing with a problem within our society at large, and therefore it's hard to say, yeah, it's a problem here at Santa Monica High School that's unfortunately systemic.
I mean, this is a problem that we've been arguing over since the dawn of schools.
Well, I think that they should try to advocate it more toward, like, they should go to regular classes and tell them that I guess they can do it. It's not just it's not just only white people who are smart enough to do it, that they're capable of doing it too.
Because the administration does their job. They come to school every day, try to teach them, and it's just a matter of the student wanting to push themselves.
I think they can also start taking responsibility for themselves and start, always what they have is a soundtrack in the back of their minds that it's okay. My mom said that, we're just not English people, and you're not a reader, and that's okay to not be a reader. And I think they need to just stop falling on those kind of scripts and start taking responsibility.
Every high school that I know tracks their students, and what that means is that students get sorted into classes based on some perceived ability that they have.
If you've been in regular English all your life, it's hard to consider the concept of going up into an AP class. I think if you can start kids earlier on believing that they can do it, I don't like tracking, but you have to allow students to be able to work at the pace that they're willing to be successful.
Do students get tracked? Yes, but it's unintentional. It depends upon the placement level that they have. So for example, if they're placed in a lower level math class, and that math class is only offered once or twice a day, means that they can only be in that period, which means that other classes can only be certain periods as well. So for example, if it's a first period class, we can't put them in a 6-period PE because there's no PE offered then, so then the other things kind of fall into place. So your options are more limited.
Does tracking work to help maintain the societal structures that exist? Yeah, right? It keeps I mean, what would happen if every child was eligible for college, right? The wealthy white people would be so frustrated because now their child's not going to get into college, right? So partly the tracking system works to maintain the status quo, right? So yeah, it works for that. Does it work in terms of meeting the needs of individual students? From my perspective, no. I think that the tracking system sorts kids based on race. I think that is a problematic idea, right? I think that just because you're African American doesn't mean you can't do mathematics and doesn't mean you're not smart, right? So just like special ed, right? There are many more students of color in special ed than there are white students, right? That's another way in which we sort kids. So in that sense, are we treating people differently because of their race? Yes.
In some cases, you have almost this term that's sometimes referred to as white flight, almost this idea where we have maybe some affluent parents in our district where they don't want their students or their children in with those kids, so they place their students in AP courses, even though those students perhaps aren't at the right skill level or maybe shouldn't even be in the AP classes, but it's more of the parents' decision. Those kids, students of minority students.
I definitely think there's a trend, and I don't know if it's necessarily confined to white, but definitely people in higher socioeconomic levels tend to leave the P classes because they think that they'll have their kids will have better education in honors classes.
White flight, I can tell you what it is. It's the idea that students who are white, their parents, etc., don't feel safe at the school or don't feel like the school is going to be able to offer because, quote unquote, those students are there.
So, you know, for a long time in Los Angeles, there has been a history of white upper class and middle class families leaving their public schools, their neighborhood public schools, because they were afraid of changes in demographics at their school site, right? This first started, well, one of the times it was happening certainly was when we were forced to desegregate our schools in Los Angeles, right? And I was growing up here then, and you know, a lot of families were saying, uh-oh, our schools are going to deteriorate because we're bringing in kids from neighborhoods where kids aren't successful, right? Some of that was racial issues, right, and being afraid, and some of it was fearing that their own child wasn't going to get the education that they want. And while we may not see white flight in the numbers that we did before, certainly you see lots of subtle instances of parents yanking their kids from public schools because they think it would be better for their student to be somewhere else, and they don't claim that it's because of race, and they don't claim that it's because that their students are mixing with other students, right? That it's not going to be good for them. They claim that it's about kind of academic rigor, right? So in the name of academic rigor, what do? We take our kids out of the schools and send them somewhere else, right? Which
I've had a lot of parents call me up and say, well, my son or daughter doesn't feel comfortable in, you know, so-and-so's class because of those kids. And I always push them on that. I'm like, what exactly are you talking about? And they'll list behaviors. So they'll list behaviors that are like disruptive, or they'll list behaviors of students not being prepared. It's never really the teacher, it's never the material being covered in class. It's always behaviors of others in that class.
White flight. Well, being only here 3.5 years, I'm not sure I'm the most intelligent person to speak on behalf of white flight in this city. My understanding of it is that, as in any city, it's mostly an economic issue again.
Everyone has the same opportunities. Not everybody's prepared for those opportunities. So anybody can take an AP class as long as you've met the certain prerequisites. But being successful in that class may not come from the classes or choices that you made along the way.
No, I don't. Sometimes I think it's all equal, but there are definitely more resources available to kids who are white and have more money.
Does every kid at Santa Monica High School have the same ability to succeed? No, because not all of them had the same factors that brought them up. Certainly kids who came from supportive families that support education and And even better, if they happen to be from a family where they have the financial resources to be able to ensure that they have a college education, are set up better for what we determine as success in life in America, the material success.
I'd like to think so. I don't see any reason why any student can't compete in an AP class or be successful when they go on to college. There's absolutely no reason why they can't. Now, it doesn't mean that some have more obstacles and some have less obstacles, therefore making it easier. So in that sense, no, it's not equal. But I think that they have an equal chance to be successful if they apply themselves.
Not enough evidence to prove to me that it's overt and deliberate and mean-spirited. It's the way things are. And I know that that's very vague, and it might be hard for your viewers to understand, but that's my own experience.
I don't know if there's favoritism for white kids. There's a couple things to think about. Most of the teachers at the school are white females, okay? It's nobody's fault that that's the way it is. So I think that might be part of the problem. There has to be more minority teachers, I think, hired, and there has to be a push to hire them. I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I think it's by default. That's just sort of the situation.
We as teachers have a responsibility to teach our kids the best we can. If there is an actual, call it, racist teaching practices, which I think the only thing we look at and say no, that there isn't, then that would need to be addressed. And again, students would be the best source of that information.
No. Well, because they offer SAT programs, but if you can't pay the $500 to take Revolution, how are you going to take an SAT class? You have to teach yourself. So right there, you're not.
I think that students need to take advantage of the resources that we have. I think sometimes that it's easier to play victim, about what teachers aren't doing, but more so focusing on what everyone else is doing and taking, part in the tutoring programs and just working harder. I think it's really easy to not work as hard as you should be. And
I think there needs to be a lot of parent involvement. I think there needs to be a lot of changes in getting our students up to speed in the middle schools, especially in math and English. Those are top priorities.
I think we have to start off earlier. Start with the kids when they're in elementary school, start when they're in junior high, and be able to say, you know what, you can do it.
I focus on how do we empower people to recognize individually for you, how can we get you to be successful, however you define it.
The school is a reflection of society. And so if there are problems with a school, then that's a reflection of a problem in society. If you want to fix the school, you fix society, and then the school will improve. A lot of very extremely liberal teachers would disagree with that and say, no, we can change the school and make the school do the change and things like that. And, there have been various reforms tried and attempted throughout the years that really haven't, they address the problem, but they're like little tiny Band-Aids. They're like Band-Aids that cover the problem, but the problem is still there. There has always been that thought, change the schools, get people educated, but that would require 100% participation rate on the part of the nation. And that's virtually impossible to get 100% of the nation enrolled in schools to go to schools.
No, I think it's a problem. I don't know how to solve it, but I think it's a problem. Just because the diversity on our campus isn't reflected in the honors and AP classes, so that's got to be a problem.
I honestly don't think that the school can do much in the way of, you can offer tutoring and offer bridge classes and you can offer extra help and things like that. But I think the problem has to change in society first.
It just all depends on who the person is and what they're trying to do.
Because it's more like you try to tell your friends look, you'll be out of high school soon, and what are you gonna do? You play basketball, but what if basketball falls through? What if your sports falls through? What are you gonna do? Just what? Sell drugs like most black people do? What are you gonna do? Because if you don't try hard enough, you're gonna go to community college. If you go to community college, But what are you gonna do? You're gonna be another statistic, just hanging out in the corner working at McDonald's. What are you gonna do? You try to scare them into wanting to do something with their lives.
So part of me thinks it's inevitable. Part of me hopes that there are lots of things that we could do about it. But I think it takes all the constituents paying attention. I think it takes people coming to really believe that it's better for everybody, right? If we have students of color in all areas of the school having opportunities to do all of these things, right? We firmly do believe that it's better for everybody, right? And until people are moving along in that trajectory, we won't make these changes. I also think it's going to take enormous will on the part of many people, because the people in power are the white wealthy people. So when you got the people making the decisions, a lot of the decisions being the people who are engaged in white flight, right? It makes it really hard to change the system. So I think that that's why it takes changes at all levels. It takes folks like you all, right, who are kind of raising issue with your constituent group. It takes folks like me as a teacher educator, training teachers better, preparing teachers better to handle and think about participation in schools by kids of color. I think it takes research. I think it takes parents and parent involvement at lots of different levels, right? But it's going to take a lot of coalition building. And I think it takes people with a lot of courage, right? Because you got to stand up for what you think is the right thing, even though it may not be right for you at the moment or right for your child at the moment.
Open wide, the lover is inside, and all the tunnel's done, collided with the sun. You're staring at the sun, you're standing in the sea, your body's over me.